Hey, welcome back, everybody. Mark from Rams Up here. I decided what I'm going to do this episode is wrap up my tour across the Rams opponents, the opponents on their schedule, their 2025 schedule, wrapping it up with a look at the San Francisco 49ers, save them for last, and then I'll come back in an episode or two and we'll sum it all up as far as we'll go game by game, how I think this is going to turn out. And I'll kind of have a guess at it at the end of this episode as well, not game by game, but overall, worst case, best case, like I've been doing. And I'm also going to come back in an episode or two and continue my tour across position groups in the NFC West. And I decided the next group I'm going to look at is interior defensive linemen. So we'll do that for the Seahawks, Cardinals, 49ers, and Rams and kind of compare each group. We already did that for tight ends, running backs, quarterbacks, and also switch over to the defense. So it is episode 745 on the podcast. And, I was looking at these guys listed as players who wore number 45 for our Rams. And one name jumped out at me, and it was Youngblood. No, I'm not talking about Jack Youngblood. I'm not talking about Jim Youngblood. I was not aware of this, or if I was, I had forgotten about it. There was a gentleman that wore number 45 for the Rams in 1966, defensive back George Youngblood. Big defensive back, 6'3", 205. That was pretty big back in the day. He was actually drafted by the Kansas City team in the AFL, and then the Rams drafted him as well. Much later, he signed with the Rams, spent 1 year with the Rams, and then moved on to some other teams. Now, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, you're looking at a team photo. What the heck is that? Well, he was on the New Orleans Saints inaugural season roster, and I could not find a picture of George Youngblood, but hey, you can use this as a little trivia question next time you're at a Rams tailgate party or something. Who were the three young bloods that played for the Los Angeles Rams? That would be Jack, Jim, and George. And by the way, according to the football database, there have been a total of 4 young bloods that have played in the NFL, and the fourth one did not play for the Rams. I think it was it Kenny Youngblood, wide receiver? But 3 of them did in fact play for the Rams. A little bit of useless trivia there for you. And hey, I'm always good for a little bit of that, aren't I? So let's talk about these 49ers. And well, first off, we'll talk about their coach, Kyle Shanahan, entering his 9th year, 6-11 last year, good enough for last place in the NFC West. And the 49ers do hold a historical edge on the Rams. 78 wins, 71 losses, and 3 ties. So the Rams coming up a little short head-to-head with the 49ers, but considering how many games they've played, pretty close to even. The last game they played last December in Santa Clara, the Rams 12, the 49ers 6. We will talk about that game in a little bit more detail at the end here, so I'll be saving that. Key players, in years past, you could probably identify 15 or 20 very, very good players on this 49ers roster, but much like in Seattle, things are changing up there. Big turnover on the roster. They're kind of where the Rams were a couple years back, shedding players, veterans, contracts, and trying to get young, turn over this roster really fast. But the key players, obviously, running back Christian McCaffrey. He missed 8 games, the first 8 games last year. Wide receiver Brandon Ayuk with that big contract, which I think they're already regretting. Been rumors that he'd be on the trading block, perhaps. Not sure if that's going to happen, though. Left tackle Trent Williams, one of the best is he the best in the league? I'm not sure if he still is, but he's up there. He's getting up there in years, but as good as it gets at left tackle. And then there's quarterback Brock Purdy, 3,864 yards last year, 20 TDs, 12 interceptions. He also got the giant new contract. And inside linebacker Fred Warner, all pro, 131 tackles. I would argue he's the best inside linebacker in the league, just covers so much ground, great tackler, good in coverage. I'm not sure Fred Warner has a weak spot. And then there's tight end George Kittle, another all-pro. He has been a Rams killer. It seems like I don't know how many times he's had key catches against the Rams, kind of like he's the Tyler Lockett edition for the 49ers, just making big play after big play against us. He's another all-pro, of course. And then defensive end Nick Bosa, a Pro Bowler as well with 9 sacks. So, years past, there's a lot of guys that we could have talked about as well, but a lot of them are gone. And who have they lost via free agency? They've lost linebacker Dre Greenlaw. Remember, he had battled through a couple of injuries. Pretty sad to see, but trying to rejuvenate his career in Denver. Cornerback Charvarius Ward. He has moved on. Safety Talanoa Hufanga. His first rookie year, I think it was, he looked very promising, big hitting safety. He's battled through injuries as well. Guard Aaron Banks has moved on. Fullback Kyle Juszczyk. For a fullback, in this day and age, fullbacks aren't really that relevant for the most part, but he certainly was for the 49ers. Good for one big play a game, it seemed like. Very good blocker, obviously, and just kind of a secret weapon for them. And then running back Elijah Mitchell has also moved on. But that's not all. Those are just the free agents. And remember, the 49ers playing this compensatory pick game, much like the Rams have in years past, and they're going to get several next year probably. They seem to every year. Now, there are some other players that they released. These will not generate comp picks, obviously. Defensive lineman Javon Hargrave. Defensive end, we sometimes call him an outside linebacker, Leonard Floyd, the ex-Ram. And defensive lineman Malik Collins. And not real active in free agency as far as signing players. They did add wide receiver Demarcus Robinson. So we'll be going up against Robinson twice a year, Cooper Kupp twice a year. And they added cornerback Trey Brown. He comes over from Seattle. Seattle's been drafting cornerbacks every year, it seems like, and shedding some at the same time. And they added Mac Jones as their new backup quarterback. And he seems like he'd be a good fit for a Shanahan offense. Nothing too exciting about Mac Jones, but in Kyle Shanahan's offense, you just need a smart quarterback that can, follow the playbook, follow the plan, deliver the ball to your weapons, and I think Mac Jones can do that. What else do we got? Well, let's talk about their draft picks, and very important to remember what they lost, and then you look at what they did here. They rejuvenated this defense big time, and we're going to talk about interior defensive linemen in the NFC West in an episode or two, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on their second and fourth round picks. Defensive tackle Alfred Collins out of Texas and defensive tackle CJ West out of Indiana. Those two guys could end up starting very soon. At least I think the 49ers are hoping so. But their first picks here, the number 11 overall, Mikel Williams, edge out of Georgia. Then Collins, we talked about. Then in the third round, Nick Martin, a linebacker out of Oklahoma State. Also in the third round, a cornerback, Upton Stout out of Western Kentucky. Then you had the defensive tackle West we already mentioned. So their first 5 picks on defense. And then they went offense, Jordan Watkins, a wide receiver out of Ole Miss, and the running back out of Oregon, Jordan James, in the 5th round. Then they went back to defense in the 5th round, Marquez Sigel out of Kansas State, a safety. And then their last 3 picks, offense, 3 7th-round picks, Curtis Rourke, the quarterback out of Indiana, Connor Colby, a guard out of Iowa, and Junior Bergen, a wide receiver out of Montana. And 49ers need some of these guys they need them to be hits. They need them to step up and contribute, especially Collins and West, in my opinion. And obviously you spend the 11th overall pick on an edge rusher. You're hoping he steps up and produces really, really soon. But you have to call this out. The 49ers have not drafted well in recent years. I spent some time recently comparing the Seahawks, Cardinals, Rams, and 49ers 2022 drafts. And man, San Francisco had a pretty pitiful 2022 draft. And, since then, it hasn't really improved. A lot of people worship John Lynch up there, but I don't think he's getting it done come draft day, in my opinion. So we'll see how this one turns out. Certainly the Rams have figured it out, and the Seahawks have figured it out. The 49ers, not so much. But we'll get into those two interior defensive linemen they drafted, and those are going to be the keys to this draft, in my opinion, where the 49ers could be in trouble. So last year, what did they do exactly? They finished 6-11 last place. They ended the game on a 4-game losing streak. Offensively, not a problem. They still got it done, even missing McCaffrey as much as they did. Brandon Ayuk was also hurt. And, Shanahan knows how to call plays, knows how to design plays. His shortcoming is adjusting, I think. But again, that's another story. Offensively, 376 yards per game. That's 4th in the league. Their defense, as far as, run defense and pass defense statistically, not really that bad. They apparently had real issues in the red zone, though, because they gave up 25.6 points per game. That's 4th most in the league. And this is a defense that, they've really leaned on. It's been an excellent defense for many years. Very good offense, too. I mean, that's a 49ers story. Great offense, great defense, extremely tough team to beat. And last year, defense was good, just not as special as it had been in years past. Again, especially in the red zone. They are also -10 in turnover differential. That is not a good number. Hey, but that's something to be, I shouldn't say excited about, but, that's turnovers. Sometimes you cause turnovers, obviously, and sometimes you just have quarterbacks that give the ball away, perhaps. But generally, if you're -10 in turnover differential or +10 in the turnover differential, maybe you improve on that. Maybe you get to 500. Maybe even get to 2-3 games over 500 just by flipping the story as far as the turnover differential. So looking ahead to 2025, there's some things for the 49ers to be excited about. Number one, Robert Saleh is back as a defensive coordinator, and, he got it done his last time he was with the 49ers. I think the Jets made a big mistake moving on from him. I think Aaron Rodgers had a lot to do with that. They also have the easiest schedule in the league. Look at this week 12 through week 17 schedule for them. They have the Panthers at home, then at Cleveland. Then they're on their bye, a week 14 bye. If you're making a playoff push, that's a nice spot for a bye week. Week 15, they host the Titans. Week 16, they travel to Indianapolis to play the Colts. And week 17, the Bears. Now, a last place team with the easiest schedule in the league, that is pretty rare because typically last place teams, and I discussed this a little bit a few episodes ago, a lot of folks think, last place schedule, you're going to have the easiest schedule in the division or the league, and that's not how it works, because even though you get those 3 teams, it's more than that, teams that you play that are last place teams, you're also playing the teams at the top of your own division. And if you're 4-13, right, you don't get to play the 4-13 team in your division. It's basic math. It's kind of hard to explain on this episode, but I've discussed it before. Now, the weighted schedule, where you go and play last place teams in the other divisions and in the other conference as well, that does make up for a lot of it, but still very odd that a last place team actually has the easiest schedule. But that is the case with the San Francisco 49ers this year. So that week through 12 through 17 stretch, though, mighty easy for the 49ers. And what about versus the Rams? Well, last year, Week 3, the Rams win 27-22. They found themselves down 14-0 in the first quarter, down 21-7 in the third quarter, and they're still down 10 in the fourth quarter, are the Rams. And then they pull off a 55-yard field goal by Joshua Carty. Rams pull even 2-2 at will, 50 yards to the 49ers 5, and then Kyren punches it in. 49ers go 5 plays and out, have to punt at the end of the game, and this is that Xavier Smith return, 38 yards to the 49ers 50, and we're feeling jacked. We're going to steal a win, and we did. A pass play to Colby Parkinson, 3 penalties, a 25-yard pass interference penalty put the Rams at the Niners 25, and after a Kyren short run at 6 yards, Joshua Carty wins it. And then that crazy kick return with a bunch of laterals and 49ers getting smashed on the sideline. Fight almost breaks out. Bottom line, Rams escape with the win. And this is one of those games too early on. I just feeling pretty depressed about how this game is going. But again, we should know better, especially against the 49ers. Rams have bounced back and surprised them a few times. And this is one game they did that. Although that kick return at the end, the 49ers had me scared for a minute. And then later on in the year, the Rams win 12-6. This is in December, a rainy night in Santa Clara. No TD scored. It was 4 field goals to 2. The Rams outscored the 49ers 9-0 in the fourth quarter. So again, Rams didn't look like they were going to deserve to win this game. But in the end, their defense stepped up. Brock Purdy did not look good on a rainy day, missing some of his weapons. In that fourth quarter, the 49ers had a first down at the Rams 33, but on second down, D-Will comes up with a big interception in the end zone. That was a big play. And the Rams get away with a sweep. They sweep the 49ers. How about that? And 2-0, a 3-game winning streak against the 49ers right now. In 2025, they play the 49ers at SoFi on a Thursday night in October, and then again in Week 10, November 9th at Santa Clara. So they'll be done with the 49ers by October 10th. By Week 10, November 9th. So how do I feel about the Rams' chances against this team in 2025? The 49ers have some issues. They're going to have to hit on some of these draft picks. They're still going to be a good team. Their top-heavy roster is good enough for a handful of wins. Brock Purdy, is he going to live up to this contract? Not the 49er roster that we've seen in years past. Man, they better hope John Lynch hit on some of these picks or they could be in trouble. But that said, this team is still pretty scary, pretty good. Don't take them for granted. Don't even think about it. These 2 games against the 49ers are going to be nail biters, going to be tough, stressful games. But I think the Rams, they're good for at least 1 win. I think the worst case is 1-1. And I think the Rams could very well sweep this team. 49ers aren't sweeping the Rams this year. Kind of how I feel about the same thing I said about the Rams Seahawks. I just don't see a 49er sweep in the cards. Now, injuries could play a part. Rams got to stay healthy, knocking on wood as I say that. But that's what I'm going to roll with. I'm going to roll with the worst case, 1-1. The best case, 2-0. The Rams finish the season after this full assessment by me, walking through all these divisions, all these opponents. Worst case, 9-8. Best case, 14-3. Yeah. That seems pretty reasonable to me. I'm not predicting 14-3. I think that's a best case scenario. And then if you took the average here, it'd be 11.5. 11.5 wins. That makes sense. And my prediction early on, my gut reaction when Ian asked me several weeks ago was 11-6, and that's probably what I would say right now. But I am going to walk through each game one by one, making a prediction in an episode or two. I'll probably get that interior defensive lineman assessment out first, and we'll come back and analyze each game and see how it matches up with this. Probably going to be somewhere around 11 wins when all is said and done as far as my prediction goes. But I'll try to have that match with what I've predicted against these different groups of teams, the NFC South, the AFC South, plus Baltimore, the Detroit and Philadelphia games, and of course the Rams divisional opponents. That's what's in the cards here moving forward out here from Rams Up.